Hello, that's quite a question for which, in fact, there's not just one answer. Depending on whether we look at the history of the territory that today corresponds to France, the French state and its development, or the emergence of the concept of the French nation. From a territorial perspective, the history of France begins with the earliest human activity on the European territory of the present-day French Republic. This includes prehistory, the Gauls, the Roman occupation, and more. Yes, even before the concept of France existed, it was already part of French history from this perspective. However, this answer raises new questions. How long has France existed? Or rather, when does the history begin, not of France, but of France as an entity? It's a question for which historians offer several approaches, whether territorial, political, administrative, or even cultural or religious. So, one way to approach the subject is to make the birth of France coincide with the appearance of the Regnum Francorum, which means the kingdom of the Franks, in Latin, during the reign of the Frankish king. Clovis, who at the end of the 5th century managed to impose his authority over all the Franks, Germanic people who had settled within the former borders of the Roman Empire, among other places. This approach is usually complemented by Clovis's conversion to Christianity from paganism, generally dated to 496. This latter event provided significant additional legitimacy to the Kingdom of the Franks within Western Europe at the time. More recently, however, historians tend to consider this formative phase for France as a prelude and not truly the birth of France. In fact, a second, more recent approach is to place the beginning of France's history at the creation of West Francia, the legacy of the Carolingian Empire, that is Charlemagne's Frankish Empire, which was the territorial and administrative ancestor of the Kingdom of France, in 843, following the Treaty of Verdun between Charlemagne's grandsons. A third, more dynastic answer is to place the beginning of France's history at the rise to power of the Capetians in 987, who would rule over the country with a number of twists and changes of branches, until the revolution and the deposition of Louis XVI in August 1792, then for a few decades afterwards, during political regime changes. The fourth answer, more political in nature, places the beginning of French history, either in 1789 with the outbreak of the Revolution, or in 1792 with the advent of the French Republic, today called the First Republic, considered by some historians as the birth of modern France. It is also at this time that the pre-existing notion of the French nation serves as the basis for legitimizing political power and fully takes on its modern meaning. Other approaches date the birth of France to the early 13th century during the reign of King Philippe II, known as Philippe Auguste. First of all, a more nominal reasoning links the birth of France to its name. People only start talking about France from the moment Philippe Auguste begins, in June. In 1204, he officially used the title Philippus Rex Francii, that is, Philip King of France, in the initial protocol of royal letters rather than Philippus Rex Francorum, that is, Philip King of the Franks, thus linking his reign to a territory. Following this, in 1205, the term Regnum Franciae, meaning Kingdom of France, appeared for the first time. The Battle of Bouvines, which also took place during the reign of Philippe Auguste and was won by him in 1214 against the Holy Roman Empire, which was the great political and military power of the time, it is also still considered a decisive moment today, both for the political power of the King of France as well as for the expression of what some, admittedly more cautiously than in the past, call a national spirit. Could this be the potential beginning of a national sentiment that is celebrated after the battle in some texts from that time? However, it's a concept that appears far more complex to define, a date of birth that would only be symbolic since it was built over time. So, which date should we choose? Well, all these dates are fundamentally important for the history of France. It's essential to keep in mind that history, being the present of yesterday, is quite logically a flow that constantly moves forward. It doesn't make sense to disconnect two historical periods since one exists due to the other. France, whose history continues to be written day after day, thus has, as you have understood, deep roots. Feel free to place the marker at the point that seems most coherent to you, as historians are still fiercely debating this issue. Thank you for watching this video. I invite you to share with me what you think is the date marking the beginning of the history of France in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. See you soon.